Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBC now has a decision to make regarding Dillian Whyte, as Eddie Hearn, Whyte's promoter, tells it, for the Rivas fight with Whyte on July 20. The WBC interim title is on the line, as well as the mandatory status for Deontay Wilder's WBC belt. So that is what Hearn is saying has been offered, but Hearn, in an IFL TV interview, which many of you probably have seen by now, it was more throwaway comments at the end of an interview, but clearly he wanted to get them out, and it's generated a bit of buzz. So with this being out here, Hearn has said, we've moved on our position, and it's not only that we want the mandatory status, we want that fight to be brought forward, and if it's not, should Whyte beat Rivas, and he is the mandatory, we want that to be when we want it, and that it's a lot sooner. And he said there would be serious issues, and he said at one point a serious legal position should Dillian Whyte not face Deontay Wilder. This is, of course, if he beats Rivas sooner rather than later. He sort of said, look, a trilogy fight with Tyson Fury, it wouldn't be happening. They want to get in there, sort of spoil the party, and have Whyte fighting Deontay Wilder as soon as they can. Is that feasible, though? That's the big question, because the WBC, like all these sanctioning bodies, has rules and regulations, but effectively they're a law unto themselves, and they have discretion, and they can work loopholes, and they can do pretty much what they want here. But they have this number one rated contender in the WBC, Dillian Whyte, who's almost been the number one for, the best part of 20 months or so. It's bordering on 600 days. And being the number one challenger doesn't mean you're automatically made the mandatory. But the WBC, from what it's looking to do, from as Eddie Hearn tells it, is looking to put the mandatory status on the line for that fight between Rivas and Whyte. And it may not be designated a final eliminator, and as the rules and regulations state, it doesn't have to be. It can just be a suitably qualified opponent. So I've been through the rules and regulations, and this is sort of some of what I want to touch on now, because what of this very hardball position from Eddie Hearn, who is talking legal action, talking that they want to really have a fight with the WBC if they can't get the little bit extra that they're pushing for. And bear in mind, this little bit extra, which would be bringing it forward and having less leeway for Deontay Wilder to have voluntary challenges galore, that is really a hardball position. They're effectively saying, look, if we don't get what we want, we're going to throw the toys, the lawyers will be brought in, and no one's going to win here. We can actually look to bleed you dry. And this is what's happened to the WBA on a number of occasions in terms of legal action that's been taken against it. And we saw recently with a case involving Manuel Char looking to sort of protest his B sample. He didn't have a representative at the opening of his B sample, and he said, look, I'm going to challenge this. I will take it as far as I can. And in the end, the WBA just sort of folded. And a legal challenge, in this sense, it's the only winner is going to be the lawyers. But they will know that the threat of a legal challenge actually has some weight, because can the WBC afford to be in a protracted legal battle with Matchroom? And I think from the most recent statements from Matchroom, which were released publicly, they were in profit by millions of pounds, and they have in-house counsel, and I'm sure they would have other people on retainer to sort of have a look at matters like this. They would be going through, the situation, going, what is the best course of action? Of course, it could also just be a threat, an empty threat, holding up the stick saying, look, if you don't sort of bend to our will, we're going to do this. And they may ultimately have to, because the WBC has not really done a lot for Dillian Whyte in terms of, bending to Matchroom's will. But at the same time, Whyte has also turned down eliminators, which he could have been in. So, it is a two-way street here, but the position is clear. They're going to play hardball. If Dillian Whyte beats Oscar Rivas, from what Eddie Hearn says, from what the WBC has offered, he will become the mandatory challenger, he'll have an interim title, he'll be up for fighting the champion. But it's the when that is the key point. And Section 3.5 of the WBC's rules and regulations state, all WBC champions shall make at least one mandatory defence per year, unless an exception is granted by the WBC in its sole discretion. A champion may be required to make more than one mandatory defence per year if the WBC has designated more than one mandatory challenger for any reason. No bout shall be considered a mandatory defence unless expressly approved as mandatory by the WBC and made exclusively against an official mandatory challenger designated by the WBC. Yada yada yada. But what we can take from that is there is scope for the WBC to order another mandatory, sooner than actually just once per year. So they can do that. But it's at their discretion. So effectively, it's up to them. They can do whatever they want, and this is why sanctioning bodies are, frowned upon by a lot of fans, because they do what they want, and they do what they want to suit themselves most times. But under the threat of a legal challenge, are they going to bend to Eddie Hearn and Matchroom's will here? If Dillian Whyte does in fact win, and they allow Dillian Whyte to have a shot at Deontay Wilder sooner rather than later. Because the position at the moment from Deontay Wilder is, I have a bunch of opponents lined up. Dillian Whyte can effectively wait. If he keeps winning, I'll fight him eventually, but there is no haste from Deontay Wilder to fight Dillian Whyte anytime soon. And some of what the WBC has done in the past, it's been pretty light and lax on Deontay Wilder in terms of mandatory. He's only had 2 in his 4.5 year reign. So you can kind of look at the situation and sort of say which way they're going to go here. If I had to guess, I think some of this is bluster by Eddie Hearn, but I believe they will push for it. But ultimately, who's got the deeper pockets? Who can spend the most if they decide to go to a legal challenge? And the sanctioning body isn't made of money, so we'll have to see what happens. What do you think should happen? Is it fair for Dillian Whyte to get a shot earlier than he otherwise would have, say, had it been once a year? Because if we're talking about Deontay Wilder facing, say, Luis Ortiz, say he beats him, and then there is a challenge against Tyson Fury in February next year, for example. They've talked about February as a possibility. JD's Wilder's co-manager says it could be as early as February. Then after that, that's when it really becomes sort of rubber hits the road about when Dillian Whyte may get his shot. At a minimum, it could be 14 to 16 months away. And when you put it like that, for a guy that's been fighting a whole bunch of WBC sanctioned fights, it's a long time to be the number one challenger. So I can see why they want to do it, but it doesn't mean that the WBC will fold. But the threat of legal action, and especially publicly, it's a signal that if you want to try do something that we don't agree with, Eddie Hearn is going to really stick it to the WBC, but who knows what will happen here. Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.